You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of the mind of John the disciple, a journey into prophecies of the future whose boundaries are that of God's determination. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Scroll of Mysteries Zone. Do 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 do. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Project Truth Ministries. I'm Brian Scott Williams, and we are picking up with chapter 18. And along with me on our as our co-host is our Hebrew grammarian Janice Baca. Janice, would you like to say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit more about what we're facing in this chapter?
Absolutely, Brian. We've got something interesting in chapter 18. We've got the end of days Babel that is fallen, and we've got more information about what Babel is and what's contained in this wicked place. It sure sounds like a lot of places I know of today. So surely we're in the twilight zone, don't you think, Brian?
Yes, absolutely. And also more teaser. Hey, this chapter, if you give it a heading over top of it, you would say this is Old Testament here because we have so many matchups to Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and it's gonna blow your mind, people, what we're gonna see. But hey, Janice, you have good news, I understand, for our audience. A big announcement?
I surely do. I actually want to announce that the Scroll of Mysteries has been downloaded in 104 countries around
Ooh.
the world. That is
Yes.
astounding that this has been miraculous spreading of this word throughout the world. And
Please
I'm
help
excited
us to
about it.
continue this spread. We want every country on the planet to see the Scroll of Mysteries, this Hebrew revelation from Cochin, India. We want help. So we're asking you, please help us. Can you help us?
Amen. Amen. And don't forget to download your own free copy from projecttruthministries.org and study along with us. You won't regret this one.
No, absolutely. And with that being said, let's go on and get into this. Let's start with the reading from chapter 18. And now the reading for chapter 18. Afterwards, I saw another messenger descending from the heavens, and he had power and great strength, and his light illuminated the earth. Then he cried with all his power and said, Fallen, fallen is the great city Babel, for she was the dwelling place of the adversaries to hide all the unclean birds and creepy things. Because all of them drank of her wine, and the rulers of the earth committed fornication with her, and all the merchants became rich, for their lust was great. Then I heard another voice from the heavens say, Come out of her, my people, so that you will not be punished with her because of her perversions, for her perversions are a plague to the heavens, and Jehovah will remember her. So, just as she did, they did to her. Then he paid her double, twice as much according to her works. Then when she boasted and went after her lust, how they made her suffer, for she devised in her heart, I am queen, and I will not be a widow, nor see sorrow. For this reason it will come their sorrows on one day of death, grief and hunger, and the people will be burned by fire, because the mighty Master Jehovah will judge her. So they will be ruined over her, the kings of the earth who did fornication with her, when they see the smoke of the fire. And they will stand far away from the terror and say, Woe, at last, the great city Babel. Suddenly, your brokenness comes. The merchants will weep and hiss because no one can buy merchandise any longer. The merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, gems, silk, all kinds of wood, and instruments of silver, iron, tin, and lead, wine, oil, white bread, grain, oxen, ewes, horses, calves, and souls of man, and the fruit that was satisfaction for your spirit will leave you, and all the calculations will not be found again. And the merchants who sold her these things will stand far off and lament over her. Then they will say, Woe, and alas, the great city Babel was clothed in splendor of silk, gold, and precious stones, because within the hour all your merchandise will be destroyed. Your sailors and your seamen, your ships, your carpenters, and your barterers of your merchandise. So all the men of your war stand from far off. They will shout when they see the smoke and say, Who is like the great ruined city? Then they will throw ash on their heads, shouting, weeping, grieving, and saying, Woe, woe, the great city Babel! Because from her all the merchants who had ships were made rich by the merchandise of the sea. And now in 1 hour everything is destroyed. Rejoice, O heavens, his set apart ones and his prophets, for Jehovah avenges your vengeance for her. Then a messenger took a great stone, like a millstone, and threw it into the sea, and said, Thus Babel will sink, and not rise again, and will not be heard again. Not the sound of joy, nor the sound of rejoicing, nor the voice of a bridegroom and the voice of a bride. And no longer will there be any tool of the workmanship from the masters of handcrafts, nor will the sound of a breath be heard, nor will a light shine in any den, because the merchants were the rulers on the ground, for by witchcraft they incited all the people. And in her was found the blood of the holy ones, the prophets, and from all those killed on the ground. All right, now before we start getting into this and going through verse by verse, just want to remind everybody that chapter 18 goes along with 17, and 18 is a flashback and a reminder of the situation of the harlot, of the great city Babel that's going to be destroyed. And so this is kind of a recap. And also, chapter 19 does a very similar thing. It's also paired together and recapping. So we're doing some shifting with the timeline and time span, but John's just reiterating the things that we're seeing in the great wonder and power of that great city, that mystery Babylon. And I want to just, give everybody a reminder that that great city Babylon is a secular money-making economic system, also accompanied with a religious system, and it's also a what appears to be something like a capital city, and it has great power to corrupt economic systems and religious systems around the world. Its influence is probably the best and most greatest, not a good way, most greatest it's ever seen on the planet. Money and commerce together both is a very powerful thing, and it has the power to corrupt. And we see this over and over in history. Money and commerce will breed corruption. With that being said, let's go on and read verse 1. All right, verse 1 in the Cochin Hebrew Scholar Mysteries, it says, Afterwards, I saw another messenger descending from the heavens, and he had power and great strength, and his light illuminated the earth. Now, this is a spot where people will assume that this is Yeshua coming down to the earth. But it being a messenger and then not declaring that this is any sort of divinity, I would say this is just a messenger. What are your thoughts, Janice?
Well, that's what I've always thought is I felt like it was a messenger that had great authority. I never really saw this as Yeshua. Naturally, he does have great authority, but I don't see that as him in this case.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Mhm.
But look at the differences, Brian. Do you see the differences between the Scroll of Mysteries and the Scriptures 2009? Looks like Messenger has power as opposed to authority and great strength. And that's different than what we've got in the Scriptures
Yep.
2009. And then
Yep.
there's a light that's illuminating the earth.
Mhm.
Interesting.
This brings to mind Ezekiel 43, verse 2. In this chapter, it talks about the glory of God, how God is when he moves, it's like a big ball of light. And then anybody who has any of these interactions, like say Moses or Yeshua, when they interact with the glory and they've been in the heavenly environment with God, they end up glowing. And so we see this messenger coming down to the earth from heaven. Well, he's carrying this illumination with him. Let me go ahead and read Ezekiel 43:2. Behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. His voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory.
So then this tells us the messenger came directly from the throne of Elohim and is reflecting the glory like Moses' face did when he was before
Yeah.
Jehovah and had to cover his face with a veil.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is coming straight from God. And, I'm very curious to hear what he's got to say, right?
Absolutely. So, Brian, then the differences we see with the power versus authority and the light illuminating the earth. And well, I guess that's really not that big a difference with the illumination upon the earth and his glory being upon the earth. So it's still somewhat the same there, but power versus authority is different.
Mm-hmm.
And my curiosity is that what does the Crawford Aramaic have? Does it have
Sure.
power or does it have authority?
Let's check that out.
Oh, look, it has authority. So it is just like the Greek.
Mm-hmm.
And so interesting. So we're again, it's still showing that the Crawford Aramaic is a translation from the Greek, as we suspected.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Also interesting. It says, "Great and earth shined from his glory or its glory." That's a little more clear that, maybe he's coming from the glory of God in the
Mm,
heavenlies. So that's kind of interesting.
absolutely. And so this would tell you that he is coming from directly in the presence of Elohim, where the glory is there. And that's what we saw with Moses. And it's just really interesting to see this messenger is coming and he's on fire. He's got the glory and
He is
he's ready
shining.
to do business, right?
Yeah,
And so
that's a big deal.
absolutely. It is a big deal.
Mhm. All right, moving on to verse 2, which it says, "Then he cried with all his power and said, 'Fallen, fallen is the great city Babel, for she was the dwelling place of the adversaries to hide all the unclean birds and creepy things.'"
Yes,
All the
all the
creepy
unclean
things.
things, creepy, creepy. Because we got some creepy things here, in Texas. So um, I don't know where
Mm.
this place is, but there's a lot of creepy things. But we could have a discussion about the birds. The birds is interesting because I've always seen it as you know what this word Satan. Let's look down at the interlinear table,
Mhm.
Brian, just real quick, because it's a place of the adversaries. Okay. So the adversaries is the Satans, right? This is a plural form, ha satanim. And so now we've got these adversaries, these Satans. There's not one Satan, there's Satans. Satan also means adversary. And so now this place of all of them, all of these Satans are here in this place. That sure keeps sounding like America to me because this place is creepy as ever, right?
Yeah.
It's gotten creepier over the years.
All right, so looking at the King James, this kind of matches up with the adversaries thing. In the King
Mm-hmm.
James, verse 2, it says in present tense, "is become the habitation of devils," or what we see as Satan's. We understand now fully of how they translated that. But ours is past tense. She was, and that makes sense. past tense makes sense because it just fell.
Hmm.
If you were to say current tense, it doesn't make sense. It's already been destroyed, it's fallen.
Hmm.
So I think
I
that
agree with that.
makes a little more sense and better way to translate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we see these adversaries, these Satans that are in this place called Babel in the end of day Babel. And guess what, Brian? Babel has fallen.
Mhm.
I find that really interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, this brings to mind a passage in Isaiah 21. Let me go ahead and read that for our audience. I mean,
Sure.
you're going to be like, am I in Revelation or am I in Isaiah? All
Okay.
right, it says in 21:9, it says, and look, here comes a chariot of men with a pair of horsemen. Then he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the carved images of her gods he has broken to the ground. Let me keep reading. O my threshing and grain of my floor, that which I have heard from Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, has declared to you. I also find it interesting, mixed into these verses, you also see commerce always with this Babylon is
Mm,
fallen from the Old Testament. And that's exactly what we see here in Revelation. It's like we're reading back in Isaiah when we're
it
reading this.
it does seem like that. It does seem like this Babylon is very wealthy, and there are people gaining wealth off of this place called Babel.
Mhm.
But continue, Brian.
Yeah, and to go further, let's go ahead and flip over to Isaiah 14 and verse 23, and I'll read that to us. It says, I will also make it a possession of porcupines and marshes for muddy water, and I will sweep it with a broom of destruction, says Jehovah of hosts. And so, yeah, we don't have porcupine, but we will have unclean birds and creepy things, and we will have nobody dwelling there because it got burned by fire. So again, this is a repeat of the destruction of Babylon, what we're seeing.
It sure seems that way.
Mhm. Yeah, and to continue beating this Babylon fallen dead horse, Jeremiah 51 verse 8, it says Babylon has suddenly fallen and been destroyed. Wail for her. Take balm for her pain. Perhaps she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her. Let us go, everyone, in his own country, for her judgment reaches the heavens and is lifted up to the skies. Jehovah has revealed our righteousness, and come, let us declare in Zion the work of Jehovah our God. So he's saying, perhaps we could heal her. No, you can't heal her. There's no
No.
healing her. She is corrupt as all get out, and she's gonna go. It's all going down.
And all of these events that happened that we see in the Tanakh historically, this is all cyclical, right? And all these things continue to come back around. And now there's an end of day Babylon that is also falling. And it sure does seem like that. This is talking about the prophetic future as well, of
Mhm.
the future Babel that will suffer these things.
Yeah, and if you don't know what types and shadows is, you need to go to our YouTube channel and go look at the types and shadows videos and teachings on that. Types and shadows are throughout the Bible. Now, a type and a type is something that's a similar repeat of something in the past. Just like Yeshua, 3 days and 3 nights was a type of Jonah. Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the fish. A shadow is the image of something that's about to happen or will happen in the future. And to give you an example, they call it a shadow because it's like you're standing at a corner of a building and you see the shadow of something coming around the corner. You don't see the person walking around the corner. You see the shadow first. And that's what a shadow is, a type and shadow. And so this Babylon that we're seeing in the Old Testament, the Tanakh, is the type and shadow of this future Babylon, that is going to be raised up in end times, made powerful, and then also destroyed.
Wow, Brian, that really does sound like all of Revelation
Hmm.
here. You're right, because for a moment there, it's like, is this what you're reading out of Revelation? But this is certainly a something that's been prophesied for many years that is coming, and Babel will fall. The Babylon of the end of day will fall. And this is a wicked place where all these Satans are hiding and all these unclean birds and creepy things. But Brian, what is this unclean birds all about? What do you think about the
That's a
unclean birds?
that's a good question. We can go down that rabbit trail. The unclean birds is it's kind of a tip and a wag of the finger to, hey, animals are still unclean. There's some people out there that will say, oh, wasn't that done away with, the clean and unclean? No, God made clean and unclean from the very beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
creation of the earth. You can see in Noah's time, things were designated as clean and unclean. And then when you get to Leviticus, you have things that are called clean, and then God also declared them food. So to use the
Mm-hmm.
word food, you can only be talking about clean animals because God defines what food is, and he never says unclean animals are food. So,
And
yeah, Janice, what's that verse? What's that verse? Tell us
yeah,
about
so
that
it's I'm glad you asked, because here in Acts chapter 10, and it's repeated, the story is repeated in Acts 11, Peter gets this dream, right? And these unclean animals are brought down upon like a sheet, right? And he is told to eat. And so then this word came, and he says, Peter says, I have never eaten of unclean animals. And so, why has he never eaten of unclean animals? Because it's commanded to not eat of unclean animals,
he
right?
was
Where
righteous.
he was a righteous man. That is correct. But he gave the answer as to what was the dream all about. And in Acts chapter 10, verse 28, Peter said, you know, it is against our laws for a Jewish man to enter a Gentile home like this or to associate with you. But God has shown me that I should no longer think of any man as impure or unclean. Now, this story is repeated in Acts chapter 11. So, this isn't talking about food. This is talking about clean and unclean animals.
Mhm.
This is a group of unclean animals that he said I would not eat. So these clean and unclean animal designations never went away and then just suddenly reappear in Revelation. And so it just wouldn't make sense, because you know what? Jehovah does not change.
Yep. And that verse that says, thus declaring all foods clean, well, that sentence is in italics. It's not even in the text. It's an insert. It's an interpretation that some
Correct.
person has stuck in, and it's a doctrine. It's a man-made doctrine
That's
to put that
correct.
in. And even in its sentence structure doesn't make any sense because God has already declared what is food, and what is
Mm,
food is clean things.
that's correct. Everything that's designated as a food is clean to
Yeah.
eat. Everything that is unclean is not designated as food. You are
Yeah, that
correct.
that would be something a Gentile Greek person with a doctrine might insert into the text. Would you say?
It's what it sounds like, or at least somebody with an agenda for
Agenda.
sure.
Yeah.
I would think so, because these days people see everything as ready, good to eat and clean, and it's just not. There are
Yeah.
many things that are not good to eat.
Yep. According to the Bible and God's holy text, just because you can swallow something doesn't make it food. Keep that in mind.
That's right. That is correct. So here we are back
Yeah.
in Revelation, where now we're seeing all these unclean birds and creeping things,
Yeah.
and that just sounds terrible.
Yeah. Creeping things reminds me of Ezekiel when Ezekiel was lifted by his hair and transported over to the temple in a vision. And then he got to see behind the wall of the temple, and he sees them worshiping creeping things in the temple.
Mm.
Creeping things. They're talking about idols, people. That's the
Mm,
creepy things. They had images of creepy animals that they were worshiping as idols.
interesting.
So that could be a little bit of note of idol worship here.
Could be.
Yeah. And
And you know what? It could also be talking about those Texas redheaded
uh,
centipedes too.
oh yeah, those specific ones, huh?
Well, they're a little creepy to me.
Yeah. You know, my mind also like wondered, okay, what could it look like in the future? How could I apply that to a future thing? Well, could it be genetically modified creepy crawly
Oh,
creatures?
interesting, Brian.
I'm just throwing it out there like, hey, science is not going to
Yeah.
stop putting together crazy animals.
Not
Could
just
that be
animals, but
something
they're
like that?
mixing mankind with animals and
Yeah.
other creatures with other creatures.
Let's just
Yeah.
say the door is not completely closed on that idea.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, that brings us to verse 3, in which it says, because all of them drank of her wine, and the rulers of the earth committed fornication with her, and all the merchants became rich, for their lust was great.
Wow.
Well, I just want to explain that there's a lot of places in the Old Testament where it says things are great, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It just means it's mighty, large,
Mm,
impressive, all inspiring, and the amazement of it. And for this case, yes, she was great in her abilities to cause people to be lustful. She
that's
was
right.
powerful.
Yeah, it's her their lust was great. It was extreme. It was an abundance of lust and just horrible atrocities is what it sounds like. But look at the Aramaic, Brian, where it says by the abundance of her luxuries. So it says the merchants of the earth have been enriched by the abundance of her luxuries.
Mhm.
So I guess it's the same thing as saying and the merchants became rich,
Yeah,
but it's just phrased differently. Interesting.
yeah. Now I know a verse that completely matches this and might be interesting to our
Oh,
listeners.
I'd like to hear that.
Jeremiah 51 again, which we were just in, verse 7, it says, Babylon was a golden cup in Jehovah's hand that made all the earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, therefore the nations are deranged. So, I mean, we have another repeat, this is technically in Revelation still part of God's plan. He is allowing all these
Mm,
things to happen. And just like the Babylon and Jeremiah 51,
hmm.
God is allowing this to go out to the world and them to drink from her cup and to be intoxicated with her allure and to be synced up with her commodities and all of her riches that she is giving out to the world.
Absolutely. And it sure seems like the nations today are really deranged
Mm-hmm.
because the world has gone crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense though, once you give out massive amounts of money or people are making
Hmm.
masses amounts of money, they become deranged. They become crazy. I
That's
mean,
right.
can you, I don't know if anybody is familiar with Pablo Escobar down in Colombia, but the guy made so much money off drugs. He moved like a complete another country. And
Wow.
so when he did things like they were like subject to his reign of terror and just anything that he wanted, they're still dealing with the effects of him bringing in hippos into his country and just releasing them into the rivers.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. And then
derangement.
you hear about the deranged like cartel, and
Hmm.
them burying money underground and burying it in their walls of their house and then living impoverished. It's ridiculous, crazy things that they do with, that's their world that they live in too. It's deranged. Money will bring you, the love of money and the lust of money will bring you to that point.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and pop over to the King James. I just want to point out a few
Sure.
things. Okay. So in the King James, we have one spot where it's an additional add-in, and then we have another spot where it kind of leaves the door open for doctrinal interpretation. So just want to make sure I point this out. So the spot that we have here for an addition would be at the beginning of the sentence, for all the nations have drunk of the wine, which is what we have in the Cochin. But then it goes on to say, of the wrath of her fornication. So they have of the wrath, which is not present in the Cochin. Well, that seems like a different direction. Why are we putting wrath in there? We just know that it's the fornication that's the subject of what she's doing. We saw that in previous
Right.
writings, but it just makes more sense that the Cochin were just drunk off her wine and of her
So,
fornication.
and the drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and we don't see that in the both of the Aramaics, right? We only see the drinking of her or the taking of her
Oh, it's
fornication.
in there of her wrath.
Wow.
Look at
Okay.
that.
So is there? Okay. So it is in the Scriptures 2009 and it's
Mhm.
in the Murdoch Aramaic. And is it in the
Interesting.
Crawford Aramaic?
Yeah, let's flip over to that one. That's a unique marker that stands out.
It is a unique marker.
No, it's not saying.
With That's interesting, Brian, that the Crawford Aramaic does not have the wrath. There is now this difference between the Crawford and the Murdoch, which is odd. And
Mm-hmm.
well, it's strange.
Yeah, strange to say the least.
It is strange. It's out of character for the Crawford to be out of sync with the Murdoch, but we do have a
Hmm.
few cases of that.
Yeah. Well, let's flip back to the King James. I just want to point out there at the end, it says, and the merchants of the earth were waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So to say rich through the abundance of her delicacies, well, what delicacies? What are you even talking about?
It is
Really leaves it
strange.
open.
It does, but then you see that the Murdoch and the Scriptures 2009 have like luxuries and not delicacies, but it seems that they changed this to something that is more related to foods.
Yeah. I mean, are they trying to say that they're eating the unclean birds and drinking wine?
Well, that's a good question.
I'm not eating or drinking that stuff.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, thank you.
Mm-mm.
All right, that brings us to verse 4, in which it says, then I heard another voice from the heavens say, come out of her, my people, so that you will not be punished with her because of her perversions.
So now we are getting a direct order to come out of her, my people, so that you will not be punished because of her perversions. Now, the problem that I'm seeing with this is that we don't entirely know what Babel entails. Now, you mentioned a lot of things that it represents, such as the business, finance, social, economic, whatever. I mean, there's so much more, and it would have to be a people that would have to be very conscientious of what the entire scriptures say, and I do mean from Genesis to maps. We need to know
Mhm.
everything about what Babel entails and what we need to come out of, because we're being given a direct order to do such so that we're not caught in dad's belt.
Right.
Because when dad swings the belt, he's going after those. And if you're in the way, you'll get hit.
Yeah. I mean, you can relate to this. You can apply this to your life. Is there something in your life that you need to come out of? Do you think that you can hang in there and maybe change them or change the system? Or should you just come out of it and be clean and not deal with those things? Uh, you know, I've asked this question many times of myself. Should I stick around here? Do I need to be hitched up to these people or this system or whatever? And just look around and look at their fruits. That'll give you a lot more answers.
Mm-hmm. And not only the fruit of those that are around us, the company that we keep, the lifestyle that we personally live in when the doors are closed and we're at home, and how we interact with others, and the I mean everything around us. Look at your money. It's all about um idolatry. It's all about the perversions. And there's it's a lot more difficult coming out of the financial aspect of it when you're stuck in the middle and you're not quite sure which direction to go. And that's where prayer is going to be important, because we will have to be given a direction as to what we need to do, because we need the spirit of truth upon us in order for us to understand what's our next step.
Absolutely. Now, I'm thinking about this verse and applying it to the people who it's actually speaking of at this time in the context of our chapter. Well, that makes me think that there are people who do not have the mark of the beast, but they are still plugged into the system, still making money and exchanging and doing things with the harlot, the great city Babel, and they're still tied in. And this message is to them that, hey, you need to unhook. You need to get
Mm-hmm.
out. It's time to leave. You need to come out of her and cross over and
Mm-hmm.
be separated. Kind of like Abraham, right? He came out of the multi gods that they worshipped in Ur of the Chaldees. He crossed over the Euphrates River and became a righteous person following the one true God. I think that's another thing that's happening here. God is calling
Yes,
these his people. Notice this, my people. So they're still connected to God, and there's still a chance for these people.
that's right.
And that's beautiful.
It is. And these are the people, like you said, who have not taken the mark of the beast, nor worship the beast or his idol. And these are the people that are still trying to stay in the gray zone, the gray area. And it's what it seems to me, or it's those that just are not entirely sure as to if they want to go one way or the other. I think this is a time that decisions are made, because there's about to be great trouble in the land. And I do think it's going to be, of course, all upon the earth, as it's supposed to be upon all of the earth. But we have some decisions to make to get out of the way and to come out and to go under his wing of protection, as Psalm 91 says.
Absolutely. All right. That brings us to verse 5, which it says, for her perversions are a plague to the heavens, and Jehovah will remember her. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh,
Wow.
a plague.
A
Like, I'm
plague.
thinking
And
like Egyptian plagues.
it is, it's like, and not only that, Jehovah
Terrible.
will remember her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, God will remember everything if he wanted
Oh, he will, of
to.
course, of course he will.
Yeah.
It just makes me cringe when I think of Jehovah will remember her. It's like, that's not good,
Yeah.
because you're about to go down.
Yeah, he's keeping you on mind because he's going
Mm,
to punish you. He's going to destroy you.
that's right.
Yeah.
And then you see the differences with Jehovah and Elohim. So we should check Crawford to see if it has Jehovah or Elohim.
And it says Al-Ha, which is God.
It does say God.
That does not denote the name of God there. So
Okay,
again,
so it
another
does match.
difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I'll say this, just to continue on. Yeah, she is sending out her perversions as a plague all around the earth. Well, she's exporting her wicked ideology,
She
essentially.
is.
So
She
that is
is.
something to be on the lookout for. Is there any place on the planet that's sending out their wickedness, exporting it? Uh, and again, I'm looking at the Middle East and I'm saying, okay, is there something going to pop up that's going to be great and terrible, and people are going to make a lot of money? I'm
Mm.
watching. Are they going to rebuild ancient Babylon?
Oh, no,
Are
that's an
they?
interesting thought.
Yeah, it's just. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe I don't. We have to keep watching all these possibilities. You know.
Every time I think about Babel, I think about CERN and how, they were of all one language at Babel. And
Mm-hmm.
CERN, they have no communication problems, yet they have these scientists from all over the world, and they have no problems communicating with each other
Mm-hmm.
because of the artificial intelligence and being able to, they wanted to create the God particle and their own little universe and things like that. It's just
Mhm.
crazy stuff. But that's a little bit of what I was thinking about when I thought of this verse.
Well, that would certainly be a plague on the planet.
It
They
would be a
opened up
plague on the planet.
portals and black holes and
Mm,
started eating up the earth.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to verse 6, in which it says, "So, just as she did, they did to her. Then he paid her double, twice as much according to her works." So there is this equal justice,
Mm,
just like we find in the Torah.
right.
People will talk about, oh, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's not really what that verse means. What that verse means is equal justice. So if you accidentally poked out a guy's eye, well, you have to pay him the value of what would be deemed as an eyeball.
Mm,
Or if you knocked out a guy's tooth, they would calculate up, well, what would the price of losing a tooth be? Then you'd
yeah,
have to pay them the tooth. And maybe an eye is way more valuable than a tooth, but still the guy needs to eat, right?
right.
But this is all Torah. This is Torah, and so she has done super wickedly. So God is going to pay her the wages of her sin. That's something you earn, is the
Hmm.
wages of sin. And so she's going to get it. Actually, she's going to get twice
She
as
twice
much.
as much. That's right.
Double, double.
According to
She's
her
double
works.
guilty
Mm,
because not only did she do it, she made the rest of the planet do it too.
that's right.
So all of those that she is made defiled,
Mm,
she is responsible. She's going to
that's right.
absorb all their guilt as well.
That's right.
All right, verse 7, in which it says, "Then when she boasted and went after her lust, how they made her suffer, for she devised in her heart, I am queen, and I will not be a widow, nor see sorrow." So there's
Mm,
this pride and puffed up air
I was
about
thinking
her.
the same thing.
She is arrogant
Very arrogant.
and basically
Um,
saying, I'm not gonna take it. That's what she's saying.
that's what she's saying. And she thinks that she can say it, right? And she clearly doesn't realize who she's dealing with. She doesn't have to worry about
Mhm.
anyone on the earth. She has to worry about Jehovah himself. And so she is boastful, prideful, and she will go down, even though she says, "No, I'm not." Yes, you are.
Uh-huh. And pride comes before the fall.
Before the fall.
So she's definitely gonna fall. See, this is
Absolutely.
a recap of the whole situation,
Mm,
what we're seeing here.
absolutely.
Yeah, let's flip over to the King James,
Sure.
verse 7. We have in here, it says, how much hath she glorified herself and lived deliciously? So much torment and sorrow give her. So I think
So
that's kind of wordy, where it could just been suffer, which is what we had.
why do they keep going to like the foods or the
Mhm.
delectable, deliciously or whatever? they,
Yeah,
they,
it's a
they,
bit
they keep,
strange.
it is strange. It's very strange wording. She's lived
Mhm.
deliciously.
Yeah, I find it weird. It's this torment and sorrow give her. Well, you
Mm,
could have just said suffer. That's what the Cochin is saying. Suffer.
yes.
Okay, we get it. All right, verse 8, which it says, "For this reason it will come their sorrows on one day of death, grief and hunger, and the people will burn by fire because the mighty master Jehovah will judge her."
Oh my goodness.
Mm, yeah.
So one day there will come grief and hunger, and Jehovah himself will bring burning fire. Yet again, we'll see burning fire.
Hmm.
Oh my
Burned
goodness.
by fire. That burned by fire we saw back in Revelation 17, verse 16.
Mm,
Harlot is burned by fire. Again, we're talking about one and the same here. This is a purifying, getting rid of, burning it up type fire. This is cleansing, and this is the wrath that
hmm.
they deserve. And who is a better judge than Jehovah?
Right.
Nobody. He's the
Right.
ultimate judge. He's
And
the best judge of all judges.
and Brian, there's, they do burning of like fields for the sake of doing a cleansing of the fields, right? It's a
Mhm.
controlled burn. And it, like you said, it brings a renewal of that field. And so the burning must happen in order to burn off those things that are dead and no good and of no value so that the good can produce.
Yeah. All right, moving on to verse 9, which it says, so they will be ruined over her, the kings of the earth who did fornication with her, when they see the smoke of the fire.
Wow. So now the kings will be ruined. Everybody will be ruined who stays with her. And these kings of the earth who's done fornication, my goodness.
Mm,
And they think they're probably prideful and saying, no, we can't be brought low. We're all connected together. We're good to go. And who is God that he would, come bring me down? And so they're going to see with their own eyes that they will go down and they will be falling like her.
yeah, they're going to be falling in. You know, there's another falling that we saw
Hmm.
back in Ezekiel again.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and flip back to it now. I'm telling you, I pondered this little question for a while. Here's another scenario. Is Tyre a type and shadow, or is Tyre a future thing again? Are they going to rebuild
Interesting.
Tyre? So Tyre is an island off of Lebanon, and Tyre in the time of Ezekiel was extremely wealthy. It fit a lot of the things that we're describing, the city by the sea, the merchants, and all that stuff. And we'll see this here, but it was extremely powerful for its day, and it all came down.
Wow.
So let's go ahead and jump in Ezekiel 26 in verse 15. I'll go ahead and read that now. Thus saith the Lord God to Tyre, will the coastlines not shake at the sound of your fall, when the wounded cry, when the slaughter is made in the midst of you? Then all the princes of the sea, remember merchants of the sea for this in Revelation, and Ezekiel 16, we'll pick back up. Then all the princes of the sea will come down from their thrones, lay aside their robes, and take off their embroidered garments. They will clothe themselves with trembling. They will sit on the ground, tremble every moment, and be astonished at you. And they will take up lamentations for you and say to you, oh, you have perished, oh, one inhabited by seafaring men, oh, renowned city who was strong at the sea, she and her inhabitants who caused the terror to be on all her inhabitants.
Interesting.
Now, in the Hebrew, Tyre is Tisor, and it means rock or stone. And we'll see a little bit of a parallel with the rock or stone being tossed into the water later in this chapter. But there's a lot more we'll see with Tyre and this repeat of it being fallen and it doing the merchant activity that we see that the harlots and the great city Babel was doing.
It certainly seems like a type and shadow of today, which I essentially I've not related that together.
So everybody's going to mourn and be upset at her destruction, just like they were mourning Tyre's destruction. All right, let's flip over to the King James. There's something I want to show you that's a little wordy and a little bit of an add-on. So in King James, verse 9, it says, the kings of the earth who have committed fornication, and they live deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her. And we don't have that in our Cochin. We don't have that they say they lived deliciously with her and shall bewailed her and lament for her.
No, it don't. It doesn't have it on the scroll of
Mm-mm.
mysteries.
No, and it's a bit wordy. I mean, yes, they're going to mourn for her. They just lost their money opportunity, but we just don't have it there.
No, we don't.
All right, moving on to verse 10, in which it says, "And they will stand far away from the terror and say, Woe, and alas, the great city Babel, suddenly your brokenness comes."
So they're shocked. They're shocked and they're dismayed that she could actually be brought
Hmm.
down low. And so, because they perceived her to be indestructible, they perceived her to be, you just couldn't ever bring her down.
Hmm.
It's amazing.
Yep, truly is. They just couldn't fathom it, but they also are making so much money, so money
Mm,
will blind your judgment.
yeah, absolutely, it
Always
will.
remember that. All
Absolutely.
right, let me just point something out real quick. This
Hmm.
is just, yeah, I noticed it. Comparing to the King James, we see at the very end of King James for this verse, it says, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Now, we don't see the 1 hour that judgments come. We just say your brokenness comes. There's no time aspect to it. It seems like the 1 hour is an add-on, but it could be an interpretation. Maybe our scribe missed it because later, if we flip over to Revelation 18, verse 17, we then see it does say for
Yes, it
another hour is what it says.
agreed.
So yeah, if we
Okay.
look at verse 17, we can see it does use hour, but
Hmm.
it doesn't say 1 hour, like what we see in the English or the Greek. They use that this in 1 hour she is falling. Essentially, Babylon, the city, is falling within an hour according to the Greek, but our Cochin does not denote a time.
You're right, Brian. It does say because within that hour, now it is addressed here in verse 17, which is interesting, but it certainly is not in that previous verse that we were just looking at. So here in 18 verse 10, they as far as the scriptures 2009 and the Aramaic, which pretty much reflects one of the other, and the of course King James does as well. And this is coming from the Greek where it is defining a time frame of 1 hour. So let's just check out Crawford Aramaic and see if it has the 1 hour time frame.
Yeah. It could have worked its way in as an interpretation. They know that later it talks about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be inserting, oh, it fell within an hour.
Okay. So it does have 1 hour. So it is interesting that it does have it. Now there is that thought that perhaps it was missed by the scribe of the scroll of mysteries, or it
Perhaps.
was just not there.
Mhm.
And so with all of this is speculations because we don't know what was on the version before the scroll of mysteries was copied. So
Correct. All right, moving on to verse 11, which it says, The merchants will weep and hiss because no one can buy merchandise any longer.
so their money is affected. So they can't buy and sell anymore with this great city Babel.
Mm.
And they're going to go broke over this.
Yeah. And I would say the thing to draw out of this is notice, all right, one is weep. What is weep?
Mm-hmm.
Well, weeping is sad. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other one is hiss. Well, what is hiss? Hiss is mad. So some are mad and some are sad at this
Yep.
situation. They can't do commerce any longer.
They cannot do commerce.
So
You're right.
so the fun and the money has ended.
It's over. Their delicacies are over.
Mhm.
That's right. It's over.
No more.
Mm-mm.
All right. Verse 12, which it says, The merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, gems, silk, all kinds of wood, and instruments of silver, iron, tin, and lead. these are the types of things that this great city Babel was selling out.
Hmm.
These types of merchandise and goods were going out to all the world, and the world was buying it. In my
Yes.
mind, I'm thinking like, oh, so like a drone distribution center. Are we talking about Amazon here?
That's what it
What's
sounds
going on
like.
here?
Hmm.
Selling to the world.
Yes. And so we've got all their precious things that they're not able to sell anymore. And you can see like maybe tables filled with these things, but yet they can't sell these things anymore. They've made many things, but no one's going to buy them because their
Party's
their their
over.
day is over.
Hmm.
The party's over.
Yeah, it's all getting burned to ashes. God is bringing
Absolutely.
fire, and the feast of the birds would be like, oh, they turn into bird poop essentially, right?
Essentially.
God has elevated this wealth. God has put all these beautiful things and gold and silver and everything in their possessions to raise them up. And this is all part of God's plan. So then he can bring it down. Now
That's
let's
right.
go over to chapter 27 in Ezekiel and look at verse 12. Now, this is really going to match what we were just reading. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Verse 12, Tarshish was your merchant because of your many luxury goods. Now, this is talking about Tyre. Remember, we were just learning about Tyre.
Mm.
They gave you silver. Okay. Iron. Yeah, we had that in our verse. Tin and lead for your goods. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech were your traders. They bartered human lives. We'll see that in the next verse. And vessels of bronze for your merchandise. Tyre was an amazing place to be, full of merchants, wealth, and great abundance. And we see this exact same description of these precious stones and types of metal all being listed here just straight out of Ezekiel, also found in Revelations 18, verse 12
Wow.
and
That is
13. We'll
interesting.
find it in 13 as well. We just keep seeing the
Mm.
listing.
Oh, well, then let's look at 13.
All right. All right. Tell me if this sounds familiar, right? Verse 13, wine, oil, white bread, grain, oxen, ewes, horses, calves, and the souls of man. Remember, I pointed that out when we were reading
Hmm.
from Ezekiel 27. Souls of man, that's slavery.
That's right.
They're selling people, or
That's right.
maybe they're doing human trafficking.
I was just going to
That's
say
kind of
that.
the modern term,
Hmm.
open selling of people, moving them in secret.
That's right. Like sex trafficking, the
Mhm.
the child trafficking.
Yeah.
That yeah, absolutely. That's it right here. I mean,
Now,
they're putting these people and children in shipping containers, so it's happening today.
yeah. Well, they're being included in their trade. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that's part of their commerce, I guess. And, that's one of the most expensive things today.
Right.
If, you got firearms and weapons, but human trafficking is
Mm,
more valuable than all the other ones. And
that's
we
right.
see that in our Texas border. There was some politics going on in the working of cartels, and they were making crazy amounts of money, so much
That's
money they
right.
stopped moving drugs and just focused on smuggling people, and it was just
Yeah.
truly terrible. Glad that that has stopped as of right now. Hopefully all of it can stop.
Right.
But I will point this out. This is something that came to mind when I was reading this verse. There is a religious system on the planet right now that completely allows slavery and would completely fit religiously and economically with selling people in slavery. And that religious system is Islam. But yeah, Islam is completely okay with slavery. It's the complete opposite of our biblical principle. You're not supposed
Hmm.
to kidnap somebody. That's against Torah. And
Hmm.
also, we have the founding story that God focuses on, said in the Bible, that He is the one who brought us out of the land of Egypt from slavery and bondage.
Right.
And so it's a very big deal. It's kind of his main sticking point is that I'm the God who did this. I brought you out of slavery. And so slavery is a very important thing to us. And as a Christian or a believer, follower of Jehovah and Yeshua, we're not to be in bondage. We're not to be in slavery. We are meant to be free. And so it's a very sad thing to see something like this, that it'll still be happening.
Absolutely.
I
But
was just gonna say maybe one day, the thing that's gonna have to happen to end all slavery around the world is Yeshua's gonna have to come back. We're gonna need the Messiah to
absolutely.
end slavery for good, because we clearly
But
see it here in verse 8
pretty
or
much all
verse
of
13.
mankind seems to be in some kind of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
They want everyone to be enslaved to that government and selling your social security and you as a person, individual, and these wicked governments. So slavery continues in one way or another. Either it's a physical or it's some kind of financial uh, system that people we need to recognize what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the mark of the beast. You can't
Mhm.
buy or sell unless you have the mark,
That's
and
right.
that coincides with the ideology.
Absolutely.
You don't agree with them, you won't be able to buy or sell. That's slavery. That's mind control. That's mind
Absolutely.
slavery and
And did you know,
behavior
Brian, that we
slavery.
have the real ID coming in May in the United States,
Hmm. Well, I'm not doing that.
right? So then
Yeah.
you can't fly unless you have the real ID. I do
I'll,
think for a temporary period of time they allow the passport,
yeah,
but
I'll use passport until I
right?
can't. And then I just won't fly anymore.
No, then you drive where you can and you swim the others.
I'll swim. I'm a good swimmer. I can make it across the Atlantic if I have
Okay,
to.
there you go.
Do 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 do. That concludes part 1 of chapter 18. And you've been in the Scroll of Mystery zones. But like the Twilight Zone, which is where we're getting this from, sometimes in the Twilight Zone, they have good endings. They have happy stories and things work out. Well, in the Scroll of Mysteries, chapter 18, we see that the great city Babel is destroyed and the harlot is destroyed. And that's a good ending. If you stay tuned further, and as we go along further out, we'll start to see more of these happy endings, these good things happening. All right. And just a reminder, you can check out our website, projecttruthministries.org, in which you can check out all our cool features and you can download our New Testament manuscripts that we put out. We have Hebrew James, we have a bunch of chapters of Matthew, and of course, the Scroll of Mysteries, the Cochin Revelation. You can study along with us. Now, we don't ask for money, and we're not putting our material behind a paywall. We're not selling our material. It's for free, and we're going to continue to do it for free. But if you feel inclined to give a donation, you can certainly come to this website and you can hit donate, and all the help is much appreciated. So, again, go to the Cochin Revelation, download a copy, study along with us, and help us figure out what's in this manuscript and help us to spread it. I want to encourage you to keep reading your Bibles. And as always, God bless.